And good afternoon again, Pittsburgh Steeler fans. Welcome to another edition of Steelers Brunch with Tony. And I am your host, Tony Defeo. And as always, I thank you for joining me. And before I get started, as I usually do, I'd like to take this time to encourage you and ask you to subscribe to Behind the Steel Curtains YouTube channel. We have, as always, as I always say, a plethora of podcasts to choose from each and every week, sometimes multiple ones in a day. We have a Steelers preview. I think that's hosted by Brian Anthony Davis now. The standard is the standard. That's Dave Schofield, I think, and Brian Anthony Davis. Maybe Michael Beck's in there. There's the Stat Geek with Dave Schofield, the BTSC editor, and his big brother, Big Bro Sco. There's Yeah, I Said It, hosted by the famous Lance Williams. I think Michael Beck has a show now. I saw him on last week with Brian on I think it was the Standard. It's the Standard on Sunday. He did a great job, and he has his own audio podcast, and that's also available. And there's Steelers Q&A with Brian Anthony Davis and myself every Monday afternoon at 5:00 during the offseason. During the regular season, it's called Steelers Hangover, and it airs the day after each and every Steelers game, and we talk about the game. We if it's a bad game, we talk about how bad our hangover is. If it's a great game, we talk about how bad our hangover is, because you have a hangover either way usually. So again, please subscribe to our page, and also check out Behind the Steel Curtain, the website. We bring you 10 articles a day, anywhere for anything from news to daily news. It's always there for you. Dave Schofield and the editor, Michael Beck, the new deputy editor, they take care of that. And then there's commentary by the likes of me and Brian Anthony Davis. There's film breakdown with Jeffrey Benedict and Jack Lambert. Or I'm sorry, Cliff Harris is still a punk. Ooh, I almost said something really bad about Jack Lambert there. But his name is Cliff Harris. Is still a punk. He's a long time contributor, so he does great work. They all do great work, so please check it out. It's as we say, it's your one-stop shop for all your Steelers needs. So I just want to thank you all for joining me. There's Jared Devil, there's Dave Shipley, good afternoon. Nathaniel, good afternoon. And as always, I want to talk about a variety of topics on this edition of Steelers Brunch with Tony. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the great work that James Conner and JuJu Smith-Schuster are doing this season with in the gym. The great work they're putting in the gym, and basically dedicating this offseason to taking their games to the next level. At least that's how it appears. That's the perception. I'm sure they've both been dedicated up to this point in their careers. But here they are heading into their fourth seasons. They're both leaders on the team now, even though they're still both very young. They're still leaders of the team, and they're setting a great example by last year wasn't good enough. That's what I'm getting from it. Last year wasn't good enough, both from a team standpoint and from a personal standpoint. James Conner had issues with injuries, as he's had over his first 3 years in the league, and he only rushed for 464 yards, and he was a guy that perhaps the offense could have flowed through with the absence of Ben Roethlisberger. But he missed 6 games, so he seems to have a chip on his shoulder, and he wants to show us all that, look, I'm dedicating myself to winning. He's actually come out and said that this year. I realize that it's a contract year for both of them, but he's come out and said, I'm not training and preparing and to avoid getting hurt or for a contract. I'm training and dedicating myself to winning. And as fans, we do have, I realize I'm a big James Conner fan. I love his story. I think most fans do. But at this stage, part of the story would be even better if he goes from cancer survivor to a great football player, right? So you can't do the latter if you're always hurt. So it's only natural that fans are gonna start doubting James Conner, because what's the old saying? You can't make the club in the tub, or you can't be counted on if you're always injured. And it's not that people. I haven't heard a lot of people ripping James Conner and saying, "Oh, he sucks." He's just. What we're saying is, he has a problem with injuries over his first 3 years, and that's indisputable at this point. So, the fact that he's dedicating himself to getting better and to proving us wrong is great, but he has to realize that we're only doubting what we see, and that's the fact that he keeps getting injured. I don't think it's anything personal against James Conner. I think most fans recognize that while he may not be on the same level of a Le'Veon Bell or one of the great backs in the league, he could be really, really good when healthy. And he's proven that. He proved that 2 years ago when he was on his way to a 2,000 all-purpose yards season before his season was derailed by injuries at the end of the year. And I think that helped play a part in Pittsburgh's collapse down the stretch. They were 7-2-1 or 7-3-1 at one point, and they collapsed down the stretch and they missed the playoffs by half a game. Maybe if Conner isn't injured, he had the concussion issue. He had I think an ankle or a foot injury that caused him to miss some time. If he's 100% and he stays healthy that entire year, not only does he probably get 2,000 yards from scrimmage, but the Steelers probably make the playoffs. So that's the only reason why people are downing him. It's not because of any ill will towards James Conner. It's just that, hey, your story is great and we love it, but you got to stay on the field. We want to see you take things to the next level and help the Pittsburgh Steelers win. That's just the name of the game. That's just the reality of life as an NFL player. The fans have to trust that you're gonna be healthy, and you're to trust that too, that you're going to be healthy and be reliable. As far as JuJu, he went from lovable, likable JuJu that was a man about the town, and riding his bike everywhere and learning how to drive. Big Al taught him how to drive, and doing all these great things off the field, surprising fans, going undercover, putting disguises on and going around town and interacting with the fans. And then, as always, fans begin to, sort of, for whatever reason, they start to sour on that kind of thing. And I think they did that with him too. And it didn't help that they began to sour on his off the field antics. As fun as they were, the fact that they coincided with a poor 2019, after what he did in 2017 with 59 catches and 7 touchdowns, and 2018 he had 111 receptions, 1,400 yards, 7 touchdowns. He was the toast of the town those 2 years. And then last year it was his turn with the departure of Antonio Brown. It was his turn to be the number one guy. And you can attribute it to any number of things, whether it was the loss of Big Ben early in the year. Ben Roethlisberger had the season-ending elbow injury, and the quarterback play wasn't what they wanted it to be. So you could attribute it to that. You could attribute it to the fact that he was getting double teamed, and of course he had some injury issues last year too. So you could attribute it to any number of things, but people were still they were still sort of focusing on his off the field antics. Well, maybe if he would dedicate himself more to football, he would none of these issues none of these things would be an issue. He would be at the top of his game, right? That's just how fans are always going to think. It's just how it is. Fair or not, that's just how fans think when it comes to that. They think football players should be all football all the time, 24/7, 365, eat, drink, sleep football. And when they see you on social media playing video games and having fun, even if it's in May, even if it's going to a kid's prom in May, like he did a couple years ago, people are going to see that and go, oh, he needs to worry about football more. And then when you have a bad year, it just compounds that perception. But, if dedication was your concern with regards to JuJu, obviously, the antics, those off the field, those social media antics, again, as fun as they are, they seem to be less of a thing this offseason. And what you see more and more of with JuJu is him just lifting weights and working out and getting jacked. He looks like he's training to be the next Incredible Hulk or Michael B. Jordan's stunt double in the next Creed. He looks incredible right now. He always did look look in great shape. And now he's taken. I think I read somewhere he's 226 now, and looks like it's all muscle. I don't know if that's going to help him run faster or play better, but it's certainly showing his teammates, who, again, he's a leader. He's a leader now at the age of what, 23, 24. He's a leader on that team. So he's showing his teammates that, hey, this is what it takes to be a professional. And it's showing us that, hey, look, I'm serious about my game. And last year wasn't what I wanted it to be. And I want to show you that, and there's no question in my mind that's the perception that these guys are trying to portray. They want to show the world that they mean business, that the Steelers mean business. So I think that bodes well for 2020. Does that mean that they're going to be better football players because of this? Not necessarily, but you're certainly not going to be able to blame their dedication. I mean, you can't look back and say, well, maybe if they would have trained harder. What's with the conditioning? What's with the trainers on the Steelers? Why are these injuries still keep popping up? In the case of Conner, of course, why do these injuries keep popping up? We got to look into this, how they're conditioning themselves, because that's obviously not an issue. They're definitely dedicated to their craft. They've shown it. Whether I'm sure they always were over the last 3 years. There's no doubt. You can't look like these athletes do and not be dedicated. If you want to see what a lack of dedication looks like, you should see me with my shirt off. That's a lack of dedication. But these guys, they can't sit around and eat Skittles and play video games, look the way they do. They might put that on social media. They might show themselves eating Skittles and playing video games, but clearly they're still dedicating themselves to their craft. And again, with JuJu and James Conner this offseason, that perception seems to be taken to another level. So let's see what happens once training camp starts, and hopefully in less than 2 months or maybe a couple months. So that's my first topic. And my next topic, I'm not going to lie, it's a pretty sensitive one. And I think you might probably know where I'm going with that. And that's, everything that has happened since George Floyd was killed by Minneapolis police officers a couple weeks ago. Like, the world's just been in total turmoil. I think that's not a secret. And the thought is that this, when the NFL season does kick off in hopefully in September, that more players are going to silently protest during the anthem. Like they did mostly in 2017, 2016 and 2017, but 2017 was the height of this thing, with players protesting and it causing so much division among the fans, right? People just were just fighting about it all year. So Drew Brees was being interviewed on Wednesday, and he was asked about it, and his answer was, typical of what a lot of people think when they discuss this issue. People that are offended by it. He said, "I will never agree with something that dishonors the military and the country, and my grandfathers fought in World War II." That's basically what he said, and naturally, this drew the ire of a lot of people. People were angry at Brees for what he said. And because basically the way he said it is what so many other people say, and that's, the reason why these players are kneeling, it doesn't matter to me. That's how it came off anyway. You're still disrespecting the country, and that's how I feel, and that's what a lot of people think. And in days since then, he's kind of apologized for it, and he actually wrote a online message to the president saying, "Look, I maybe I was wrong about this, and maybe I should listen to what these athletes are saying when they kneel and why they're kneeling. It's not to disrespect the military. It's to bring awareness to police brutality and racial injustice." And of course, a lot of people say, well, he didn't have to apologize. He just did that because he felt like he was pressured to do it. But I don't think so. I think, Drew Brees has been in the public eye for 20 years or so, and he's built a reputation of being a really great guy and being great in the community everywhere he's been. And I don't think he wants a certain percentage of the country to think that he's a racist or insensitive to the plight of the black community or the police brutality. So I don't think he wants that. Why would he want people to think that about him? He's a great guy, and what he said maybe missed the mark, but it wasn't. I didn't think, oh my God, Drew Brees is a racist for saying that. I just thought it was he had maybe a chance to perhaps open some more constructive dialogue about this topic, and yet he missed the mark. That's what I thought. I thought it was unfortunate that he didn't basically say, well, maybe if he would have said, I don't agree with the time and the place, but I understand the message. Maybe if he would have said it like that, maybe people would have responded. People were going to be mad. He was going to please everybody, no matter what he said, but maybe it would have come off just a little bit better. So, but I think what happened with Drew Brees and the fact that maybe he's taken some time to think about it, and maybe he still disagrees with the kneeling, but maybe he's more open to maybe seeing the other side of it. And I think everybody, the way we get on the other side of this kneeling thing, or maybe we come to find a more common ground with it, is to see the other side's point of view. I think that's one thing one area that we've failed at with this subject is all we do is scream at each other about it, and we don't take the time to see the other side. Like I'm as guilty of it as anybody. I'm a jerk about it. I'm pro. I support a player's right to kneel. And in fact, I will say that I support a player's right to do whatever he wants during the anthem. If he wants to stand and at attention and put his hand over his heart, if he wants to sing the anthem, if he wants to say a prayer, if he wants to kneel, if he wants to stay in the locker room, if he wants to lock arms with a teammate, that's none of my business as far as I'm concerned. It's none of my business. They don't owe me anything but to kick ass and to play really well when the whistle blows. That's how I've always felt about it. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who don't feel that way about it. They're offended, and no matter how many times you say it's not about the military or disrespecting the country, people just aren't going to get past that. And maybe I should be more sensitive to that as an American, as a football fan, and instead of just saying, oh well, if you don't like it, don't watch, or you're a racist or whatever boomer, whatever people like me who support kneeling or support our player's right to do what he wants, the kind of things that we say, maybe I shouldn't be like that. Maybe I should try to see the other side of it, because I have friends and family, good people. They're not hateful people, and they're offended by it. And you can't help the fact that you can't help how you feel about something. Right. And my grandfather served in World War II, and I don't know how he would feel about, he's passed on, but I don't know how he would feel about players kneeling, but I know he was my age in the 60s, and I'm sure he saw a lot of sports protests, and it didn't deter his love of sports. So I don't know how he would feel about it, but the point is, I know a lot of good people that are offended by this, that are literally hurt by it, and maybe I should be more sensitive to that. And conversely, the people that are offended, maybe they shouldn't immediately take it to a place where, well, anybody who kneels hates America, and anybody who supports these players' right to kneel, they hate America, and these players should be fired, and they're this like horrible rhetoric that people say that they're thugs, and they say racist, they call them racist. We've seen it, right? They've used racist slang to describe these players, and that's unfortunate, and it's the truth. That's happened. There's no question about it. So instead of going right there and saying, well, if you kneel, then you're scum, you're a piece of crap, and I'm through with the NFL. What that does, if you react that way on either side of this issue, you shut down any possibility of a constructive conversation about it, right? So maybe instead of like just seeing the side of instead of just being offended by it, maybe see the athlete side of it, why they're doing that, why they're choosing to kneel, why they're choosing to put themselves on the line, so to speak, and protest like that during a game. I mean, look at how many, as a white person, I see the police and I don't fear them. I feel protected when I see the police, right? But there are so many, I've heard so many African Americans, particularly black men, say over the years that, look, when I see the police, I'm a little uneasy. I'm a little afraid. I mean, look at how many comedians have said it. Dave Chappelle, look at his, go back and watch his Killing Them Softly special from, I think it was 2000 or 1999. Matter of fact, he said, black people were just afraid of the police. That's just how it is. It wasn't even. I mean, he made some jokes about it, but he said it in a matter of fact way. Excuse me, I gotta get a drink. This is a lot for me. I gotta get a drink here. And that drink was brought to you by my nerves. But anyway, and to get back on topic, and if you don't want to believe Dave Chappelle, Ramon Foster penned a great piece for DK Pittsburgh Sports the other day, where saying that when he travels back and forth from Pittsburgh to Tennessee, he has to plan out in his mind what he would do if he was ever pulled over by the police, like how he would act step by step, just to keep himself safe. Cam Hayward. I mean, who's a more respected Steeler than Cam Hayward in the Pittsburgh community? I can't think of one, right? He said, when I'm around the police, I feel a little bit uneasy. It's just a fact. That's what he said. That's how he feels. You can't help it. That's how he feels. And, instead of looking at like throwing all these stats at each other when we talk about this thing, instead of like just going at it, maybe we should just look at it from an emotional standpoint and say, look, when these players are kneeling, I mean, you could throw all the stats out the window. When these players are kneeling, what they're essentially telling you is, I'm kind of afraid of you. I mean, Cam Hayward, maybe if you're a police officer, maybe you idolize Cam Hayward. Maybe you have his jersey. Maybe you wear it every Sunday when and you cheer him on when he's getting a sack, right? Maybe you've played on the same charity softball team as him. What Cam is telling you, Mr. Police Officer, what he's telling you is, when you have your uniform on and he's just citizen Cam Hayward walking down the street with his kids, he's a little bit afraid of you. He feels uneasy around you. And you have to ask, do you want your citizens, good citizens, law-abiding citizens, to be fearful of you? I don't think you do. You want them to respect you. You want them to abide by the law, of course, but you don't want them to fear you. You want them to feel safe around you, right? Like me, again, I feel safe when I'm around the police. I'm just some jackass from Crafton who argues with people on Twitter all day, but I feel safe around the police, right? I don't feel afraid, right? It's like Lex Luthor in Superman 2, the one with Christopher Reeve and the one with Gene Hackman playing Lex Luthor. At the end of Superman 2, when he's about to be destroyed by General Zod and his other two cohorts. I mean, these are fellow bad guys, right? Lex Luthor's about to be destroyed by them, and Lex Luthor comes along, and Superman comes out of nowhere, and what does Lex Luthor say? Oh, Superman, thank God. So even the evil, despicable Lex Luthor felt safe around Superman, a guy who flew down to Earth to protect everybody, right? That's what even Lex Luthor felt safe around Superman. So I guess maybe police, maybe they should ask, do we want our citizens to feel this way? So I think if we could see both sides of this issue, maybe we'll get past it, because I think that's the only way we're going to get past it is to try to be more understanding of each other, and and maybe take a cue from the NFL players, because they're already okay, maybe not okay with it, but they're already showing you how to deal with it. I mean, these players have been kneeling for 4 years, right? These protests have been going on since 2016, yet playoff games are still being won. Super Bowls are still being won. This is more a NFL fan issue than it is an NFL player issue. Again, there are certain players that may not agree with it, but they're still finding a way to work with each other. So I think maybe we need to be more understanding of each other. Maybe that's how we'll get beyond this issue, because what do you want? Do you want the NFL to take a hard line with this and say any player that kneels gets suspended or fined or whatever? That you might be okay with that. And if it's some Joe Schmo that does it, okay, fine. Nobody's going to miss him. But do you think that the Chiefs are going to be okay with Patrick Mahomes missing time for kneeling? You think they're going to say, oh, okay, our season's ruined because our player decided to kneel on the sidelines. All right, yeah, we're okay with that. Do you think the Ravens are going to be okay with Lamar Jackson being suspended for kneeling during the anthem? You think they're going to be okay with their season being ruined with that? So that's never, even if the NFL does implement to take a hard line with it, it's not going to work, because they're not going to suspend their superstars. So that's just not going to work. And if they decide to do away with the anthem, that's just going to make people angry. So what's going to have to happen is we're just going to, I think personally, we're all going to have to just hopefully accept each other's points of view. And when I look at a football field, to me, that's America. When I see these players on the sideline, when I see one guy standing, with his hand over his heart, honoring maybe somebody that was lost in battle, or maybe he served in battle and he just wants to pay tribute, or when I see another player kneeling because maybe he wanted to pay tribute to somebody who maybe was killed unjustly, maybe by the police, or maybe there's another guy that's just standing here saying, let's get this anthem over with. I just want to play ball. To me, that's America. We all have different viewpoints. And the great thing about sports is all these guys, they all come from different backgrounds, different upbringings. They all have different viewpoints on life. And yet when that whistle blows, they all work together for a common cause. So I think, if we can have the same viewpoint that maybe the players do, would be a lot better. Easier said than done, I know. Maybe a bit naive on my part, but that's what I'm hopeful for. And maybe that's where somebody like Drew Brees can come into play. Again, maybe he doesn't agree with it. But maybe, if he says, okay, maybe I should be more sensitive to this and maybe I should listen, and maybe that side should listen to my side, maybe we can talk. Maybe Tony Dungy, who doesn't respect Tony Dungy, right? Maybe he can have a meeting of the minds between Drew Brees and Colin Kaepernick, and maybe they can, just talk this out. And I think having somebody like Drew Brees recognize that there's a problem with social injustice, racial injustice, police brutality. I think that's important. Not that his opinion is more important than a black athlete or somebody from the black community, but if people see that Drew Brees thinks it's a big deal, that thinks it's a problem, then maybe they'll say, okay, maybe it's a problem. Maybe we should be more sensitive and listen to this. And maybe they can find a way to work together and make and understand each other's viewpoints. I purposely went back and watched Chuck Noll's Hall of Fame speech from 1993 because he said something in that speech that I'll never forget. I don't think I've seen it replayed since 1993 because it was Chuck Noll and people don't really go out of their way to remember him or to quote him all that often. But he said something that I thought was really great, and it wasn't as famous as Jack Lambert's. You damn well better believe I'd be a Pittsburgh Steeler, or Terry Bradshaw saying, if I could put my hands under Mike Webster's butt one more time, it wasn't that famous, but it was typical Chuck Noll fashion. It was something in typical great head coach fashion. It was something that has stuck with me for the last 27 years. And what he said was, at the end of his Hall of Fame speech, he said, so much progress has been made through conflict, through people just fighting it out and finally coming to a resolution. But just think about how much more progress has been made when people work together. Teamwork. Chuck Noll was all about teamwork. So maybe we can all start working together on this kneeling issue and try to just, hopefully, in my opinion, just be more understanding of each other's points of view. Because I don't think you're ever going to stop. You can never stop people from kneeling. First of all, I don't think that's fair. And second of all, I don't think it's possible, because somebody's always going to feel the need to do it. So hopefully we can just find a way to be more understanding. So that's my first controversial topic. And my second controversial topic I wanted to get through. I've been dreading talking about it all day, but I have to talk about it. And that's, when is the right time for an athlete to protest? Because that's what you've been hearing all these years since these anthem protests started. It's people saying, I don't necessarily disagree with the message. It's just the time and the place. I think it's disrespectful. I wish these players would just protest on their own time. Well, what is a player's own time? Is it his or her social media account? Because I think that's their own time, right? But last week, so many athletes and coaches and teams spoke out. They issued statements regarding the death of George Floyd, and so many people took exception to it. They just said, I'm done with you. I'm not going to, I'm following you. Chase Claypool said a couple of things, and somebody was like, oh, I'm sorry, I was going to buy your jersey, but now I'm not, and again, it's your right to unfollow them. It's your right, but I have to wonder why. I mean, you said you wanted them to do it on their own time, and they are, and you're still taking exception to it. Why? It's their account. It's like you went looking for them. It's not like you turn on a football game and all of a sudden they're protesting and you're offended by that, or they're trying to bring awareness to maybe breast cancer, like they do every October. It's not one of those deals where you have to, I watch football to escape and they're shoving this in my face. It's their own account. They're doing that. And you might say, well, they're paid by the Steelers. Yeah, they're paid by the Steelers to perform well on the field and to conduct themselves a certain way off the field. But their opinions are their opinions, right? And I know what you're going to say. What about Drew Brees? So he had an opinion and people jumped all over him for it. Yeah, well, that's what happens. But, at the same time, I thought people were a little bit too hard on Drew Brees, to be honest with you. I think what he said may have missed the mark, but I don't think some of his teammates unfollowed him. I don't think that was fair. Maybe instead of doing that, they should have reached out to him and said, "Hey, let's talk about this," right? So I don't think that's fair. And before you think I'm picking on the other side or one side or the other, I'm not. I thought it was despicable and dirty that certain people were trying to play amateur detective last year and digging up old tweets from Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodges and look who they support. Look what political figure they support, and like that's their business, right? That's their right to support who they want. And they were trying to weaponize it and use it against him, especially Mason when he had that thing with Myles Garrett, and Myles Garrett accused him of a racial slur. I mean, to me, that with these guys, what their opinions are, and who they support, and what their viewpoints are, as long as it's not hateful or racist or destructive, as long as if they want to speak out about something, that's their right to do. And you might not like it, and again, it's your right to unfollow them and whatever. But they're still out there trying to bust your butts for you on Sunday, whether you follow them or not. And again, when you do unfollow them, when you do wash your hands of them, it kind of sends a mixed message, because when it came to the anthem thing, you said you just wanted them to do it on their own time, and here they're doing it on their own time, and you still don't like it. So it just sends a mixed message. So I just wish we would respect their opinions. We don't have to like them, but respect them and realize that they're not football players 24/7. They're human beings, and they have their own concerns about the world like we do. I got through those 2 topics. Thank you. I was dreading this all day. This is like I dreaded this show worse than I did my first show. I'm not going to lie, because I knew I had to talk about these things. I felt it was too important not to. So now I'm going to talk about one last thing, and that's the Steelers, the decision that the NFL basically handed down to all NFL teams, and that's every team has to conduct their training camp at their home facilities. And for the Steelers, that's the South Side. They can't go to Latrobe. They're one of 10 teams that has training camp at an off-site facility, and the Steelers have been up there every year since 1966. So this year, they have to stay at home, and that's because of the COVID-19. They're trying to limit travel. They're trying to control everything. They're trying to keep players safe, and instead of trying to deal with 2 sites and trying to deal with activity and sanitation at 2 different sites, they want to just keep it contained to one area. And I think that was smart, right? I mean, it might be unfortunate if you had plans on coming to training camp, but they probably weren't going to let fans come to training camp anyway. I mean, I think better safe than sorry, right? I think we all have to live that way until we get the green light. We're in the green phase here in Pennsylvania, but until we get the actual green light, live as close to normal as we did before, I think everybody has to play it safe, because there's too much at stake. I mean, if the NFL has an issue at training camp with people coming down with COVID-19 and maybe a rash of outbreak of cases, then it's gonna jeopardize the season. And I don't think we want that. It's already probably 50-50 whether they play on time anyway. I don't think we want anything to jeopardize the season. And I don't think we have to worry about the Steelers making it a permanent thing, because they're all about tradition and they're all about doing the right thing, right? I mean, you don't have to worry about the Steelers. I mean, I think they realize how important having training camp at Latrobe is for the city of Latrobe and that region. I mean, it's a big economic boom for them. So they're not going to, it's only an hour away. It's not much of an inconvenience to have training camp up there. They're all about doing the right thing again. And I mean, look at how they treated Ryan Shazier after he got injured. They took care of him for 3 years, right? I think they'll always have a place for him, So they're not going to just say, forget Latrobe. It's more efficient to have training camp here on the south side. No, they're not going to do that. So I don't think we have to worry about again permanently moving and having it here. I think it's too much of it's too important for far too many people to move it, So I mean, how can you have a field called Chuck Noll Field in Latrobe and not have a Steelers presence out there, right? So those are the topics I want to talk about today, and I thank you for listening. And now I'll take a few minutes and answer some questions. So fire away. Here's one from Donald Nolan, my man Donald, always a regular watcher, viewer. I can't talk English. Anyway, I was born in Latrobe. Steelers football is everything to that town. There you go. That's what I mean. It's too important to them to permanently move it out of Latrobe and have it in Pittsburgh. I think it first of all, I think if I'm not mistaken, it's a bigger facility. So, I mean, you're never going to have. I don't think you could have fans on the south side as you do in Latrobe. I mean, thousands of people sometimes show up there at once to watch. I went there with my girlfriend. I think back in 2010, that was my favorite training camp. And you know how they have multiple parking lots. Well, when we went there that day, we couldn't even find one. We had to park on the street. It felt like a half a mile away. So, you couldn't accommodate all these fans if you had it on the south side, right? I mean, just from a logistical standpoint, I think it's much better to have it at Latrobe. So I don't think they're ever going to move. Let's see here. Here's one from Nightwolf. I love that name. It reminds me of a 1980s show about helicopters called Werewolf. Or not Werewolf. That was stupid. Not Werewolf. What the heck is that called? It doesn't matter. Anyway, the first 2 weeks of the season will look sloppy. No. Even worse than normal? Yeah, maybe. I mean, no OTAs so far. No mini camp. No rookie camp. Players relying on these players on their own, get actual football reps in on their own right now, and to learn, as far as these rookies are concerned, to learn the playbook on their own. So yeah, it could look very sloppy, more than usual. I mean, and plus, let's not forget that training camp. I think they've gone from, I want to say 28 practices now with the new CBA. It's going to be 16. So that's going to take away more more practice with tackling and that, and hitting, so it could be very sloppy. Yeah, no question about it. We might not see Pittsburgh Steelers, the true any team, until a month into the season, which is often the case for, the team you see in early September is often much different than the one you see in November. So yeah, absolutely. Airwolf, there you go. Thank you, Bri. Wow, I can't believe it. I would have thought of that all day. I would have to Google it after the show. Thank you. Dave Shipley, I lived on Carson during my baseball time at Pitt. Oh, you played baseball at Pitt. That's cool. A real athlete on the show. We don't usually get too many of those. That's great. I lived on Carson during my baseball time at Pitt. Yes. Big Pitt fan. Of course, they basically let me down my whole adult life, but that's just how it goes. We can't have everything, right? If you're a Pittsburgh sports fan. Some cities have to bear with their team. In my case, I have the Pirates and Pitt, right? They're just always going to disappoint me at the end, it seems like. But anyway, it's great to see that you played at Pitt. That's awesome. Let's see. What did Lance say? Lance just wanted to stir the pot. Well, I mean, what did he say? That's Lance. That's my forte too. So I applaud Lance for stirring the pot. Who doesn't like a guy that doesn't? Who wants boring, right? I mean, you want somebody to stir that pot every now and then. So let's see what else we have here. Let's see. Mark Tobin. First week may look bad for us because we always start slow. Yeah, I mean, yeah, they do have a tendency to start slower, but who knows, right? I mean, not every season is the same, right? So who knows? Let's see. Look up the seed of question. Okay, I'm game. could be a long scroll. So bear with me. Oh, I can't. Well, it's wow, a lot of comments. Oh well, I went back minutes, so I can't find it. But I'm sure. Here we go. One from Dave Shipley, $2 for our super chat. Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Salary cap implications of no fans. Yeah. I mean, Forbes said in an article recently that the Steelers could lose up to $156 million in revenue if there are no fans in the stands, and that's 38% of their seasonal revenue. So yeah, it could affect the salary cap, because that's what the cap's based on. It's based on revenue, and the players get a certain percentage of it, and the owners get a certain percentage of it. So if you lose 38% of your revenue, it's definitely going to affect the salary cap. There's no question about it. Let's see what it says here. Lance said, "Oh, okay. Well, we've already gone down that road before." Lance said Lamar is better than Ben. Do you agree, Tony? Well, I mean, I'll say this: he's the reigning NFL MVP. But the difference between Ben and Lamar Jackson at this point is one has won multiple playoff games and the other one has not. So I could say Lamar Jackson is a better overall quarterback than Ben, but does he have what it takes to win a playoff game? Whereas we already know Ben does, So maybe Lamar is better, is a bigger weapon in his offense, in his team's offense, than Ben is in his team's offense right now. But come playoff time, who's going to have what it takes to get it done? And so far, Lamar Jackson has yet to prove that he can even perform well in the playoffs. And that's where he has to take it that's where his game has to go next before he can truly put himself in the same category as a Ben or an Aaron Rodgers or a Patrick Mahomes or Tom Brady or any of these quarterbacks. He has to show the football world that he can win in the playoffs, that he can perform in the playoffs. That was a question mark for Ben. After his first season, he did not play well in the playoffs in 2004. He did not play well. He got lucky against the Jets, and he was atrocious against the Patriots. But until he took it to the next level, the Steelers couldn't get to the next level. So, it's easy to say Lamar Jackson is a better quarterback than Ben now because he's the MVP. And Ben's never been an MVP, and he might be a bigger weapon. Again, he might be a better weapon than Ben right now. But what happens when the playoffs start? That's what we have to. When you have to make that one throw, an important throw to keep a drive alive or to win a game in the postseason. That's where Lamar Jackson has yet to prove himself, and if he does, then he'll be in an upper echelon with the rest of the greats. Right now, he's really, really good. He's an exceptional player. He's one of the faces of the league, but he still has something to prove, and I think he would be the first to tell you that. This was a fun show, so it really was. I mean, it was. I dreaded it because these are important topics, and sometimes people don't like talking about that. But that's the problem, I think, with a lot of these issues is people don't want to talk about them, or they don't want to talk about them rationally. I think if we could have rational conversations about these issues, we'd be a lot better off. So join me next week as I talk about the fake moon landing and Antonio Brown. No, I'm just kidding. But I'll definitely be back on Monday with Brian Anthony Davis for Steelers Q&A, and I'll talk to you then. And if I don't see you then, I'll see you next Saturday at noon. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for joining me.